We didn't have time to rank all red cards of all time in order, but we did decide on the top 5. The best place to buy the best red cards. So in Magic's most powerful format, there's no card ban. Well, almost no card ban, but there are a few restricted cards in Vintage. And there's a single one that's red on the restricted list. Do you know which one?
Shock.
It's not Shock, but it might shock you.
Mox Ruby?
That's not a red card. That's a Commander player's opinion.
It's red on it, but
It's a Commander's red card.
Yeah. It's Wheel of Fortune.
ooh.
3 mana, sorcery. Each player discards their hand and then draws 7 new cards. And immediately you think like, this is a symmetrical effect. Both you and your opponent get to, have the upside of 7 fresh cards, but it's not fair. This is such a broken card in combo decks. It's
Also,
crazy.
What is red really good at doing? Playing spells really quickly and emptying out their hand. So you can play land, Mox Ruby, a lot of burn spells, a lot of creatures, and then when you have no cards in hand, you just play this, you draw 7. Your opponent also draws 7, but they had 5 cards in hand.
Yeah, most likely they got rid of more cards from their hand, and that's only the fair way to do it, right? Because after this was printed, for a while, combo decks could be quite potent in Magic by generating mana quickly, and if you play all your spells on turn 1, with Moxen and rituals generating mana, and then you just refill your hand while your opponent is still sitting there with their opening 7 cards. They didn't get any advantage. They got downside. The hand that they decided to keep and not mulligan just got replaced by random 7 cards.
So there are 2 ways that makes the card really broken. The symmetric effect is true, but you as a player always have the chance to decide when you cast your symmetric effect. So that means the starting conditions are always different. If you have a color that plays all their spells, well, you draw 5 cards and they draw none.
Yeah.
But also in those days, I don't know if you ever played against Narset.
Yeah, this with Narset is a little bit disgusting.
By any of those draw 7 effects. Did I say draw 7? I meant
Just discard your hand.
yeah, maybe 1.
Ridiculous. But yeah, Wheel of Fortune also an example of a card that is really good with synergy, but if you just play it in your regular deck, it's not very good. It's
Yeah.
actually a symmetrical effect. Your opponent probably gets to use their new cards first.
For all purposes, the reason why this is number 5 is the decks that usually play it, they know that they're paying 3 mana to draw 7 cards.
Number 4 is not the most powerful of all. It doesn't reserve the spot for being the biggest, the best card, but it has been the most consistent over all of Magic's history. And I promise you, probably for you, for me, and for most of you, it's the most play ever spelled.
It's not Shock.
Oh, but it's Lightning Bolt.
It's Lightning.
Yeah.
Shock was a good direction.
It's the better Shock, which is funny
is
how
the better
Shock
Shock.
still is good. But Lightning Bolt is just
Shock is
better.
basically played in Standard right now.
Yeah?
Yeah? It's Scries.
It's I always like the comparison between Shock and Lightning Bolt because it's one number, right? And they're always scratching how far they can go at improving Shock before it becomes Lightning Bolt.
And it's funny because it's one of those comparisons you can show new people, because one is clearly better than the other. One is 3 damage for 1 mana, the other is 2 damage for 1 mana. But why do both exist? And why are people playing Shock? And that's where you can show how different power levels can be allowed in certain formats. In certain places. In Modern, you can do 3 damage with 1, but in Pioneer, that's too much.
It also shows how just a third of a card improvement can be going from medium playable Shock to really, really good Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
And yeah, it shows up in every format, even in the Pauper.
What does it's a good card in Pauper, because Pauper you get to play a lot of really powerful cards in Pauper.
Oh, Pauper sounds like a fun format. I wish there were resources to learn more about that.
I wish there was a best deck ever series to find out which was the best Pauper deck ever.
That would have been
That would be
nice.
so neat.
Anyways, Lightning Bolt, when you say it, usually if a card is played in every format, in every deck, I'd say, sounds like a bad design decision, or it sounds like I'm having a miserable time playing with that card because I've seen it so often, but with Lightning Bolt, I don't have that feeling.
Oh, it's always fun. Even when your creatures get lightning bolted, you're like, you deserve it.
It's a good feeling but when you play it, but also when you play against it, it doesn't feel too oppressive.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it's number 4. Even though it's not crazy powerful, it's just Magic's iconic spell.
If we did a video on best black cards ever, I reckon Yawgmoth's Will would be on that list.
Yeah.
Wait, we should do a list.
That's like a great idea, yeah.
Do you know where you can buy the blessed back cards?
Anyways, Yawgmoth's Will, crazy powerful card from back in the day. It basically lets you replay your entire graveyard for 1 turn, but it had the downside of exiling the cards that you played with it or that got put into your graveyard later on. Now let me remind you of a red card that does the exact same. It's Underworld Breach.
That card was a mistake.
That card came out in 2019, and it gives each of the cards in your graveyard escape. And you have to exile 3 other cards from your graveyard in order to play the card from your graveyard. You still have to pay the mana cost, but it's basically like Yawgmoth's Will, and it's an enchantment that gets sacrificed at the end of turn. Now, could the two of you tell me what can go wrong with this type of effect?
Nothing. It's a fair card that only casts
You
lightning bolts.
usually play like 1 or 2 cards from your graveyard, that's it.
The fun thing is, obviously there were a lot of combo stuff with this, right? That can go wrong, but you say it only casts Lightning Bolt. Those decks actually played it.
Nowadays they actually added Underworld Breach and Delver for value.
I think that's one of the reasons this card is so good. Because when it came out, of course, everyone tried to break it and they succeeded and they built a bunch of combo decks that just won immediately. But like in Modern right now, there's a blue-red aggro deck that plays Murktide Regent and Ragavan, and then just plays this for value. Sometimes you play it and you consider Bolt, and then that was a good turn.
Yep, even the very aggressive prowess strategies from like 2 years ago or something, they played this just to flashback Lightning Bolt over and over. Like if you had 5 mana,
which is pretty good.
That's 5 mana for 9 damage. That's a better rate than Lava Axe.
I just realized it grows your Murktide, which is kind of cool.
Yep.
So you can even kill it when you go like 5 cards and it's 11.
But yeah, one of maybe, we didn't touch on the combo aspect too much so far. One of the obvious combos that people very quickly figured out was Lion's Eye Diamond. You just discard your hand, you even have more escape fodder. Basically every card in your graveyard equals 1 mana. Because you exile 3, you get to recast Lion's Eye Diamond and have another 3 mana.
So back then, with Yawgmoth's Will, they were smart enough to exile the cards that go to your graveyard, but also exile the cards that you cast, which makes sense because once you have the ability to cast a card over and over again, especially if it gives you the resource you use to cast it, in this case, your graveyard's cards, then you can see how already there's a combo, right? So all you have to do is somehow mill 3 cards, and then cast the spell over again as it gives you mana. So I think that people use it with Grinding Station to mill 3 cards. People even use Tomb Scour, a card that has never ever been in any standard deck whatsoever.
Oh, Dredge played. That's nitpicky, but Dredge
played like
it.
1 copy.
Yes.
So it's kind of a question why this wasn't the clause on that card.
They probably didn't realize it. Probably when they designed it, thought Escape 3 sounds like a lot. Wizards of the Coast has a whole design team. They have a play design team. They build a format, they give it to these people who play and try to figure out if the cards are too strong or if the cards are not powerful enough, the ones that they really want to push. Then they give feedback and they redesign them. The process of making a set takes years. And I assume maybe at some point it was less powerful, they tried to upgrade it, and then it got lost through the bureaucratic cracks. And now
It was also a time where they really powered up cards, generally. Like the times of Questing Beast,
a lot of cards got banned.
Fires of Invention.
So what I find interesting is I'm generally pro making very good cards and then ban them because you don't get the feeling of excitement if cards are too weak. We had a lot of times in Magic where cards were too weak and people were way more sad than the other way around. But it's banned in Pioneer, allowed in Modern, and then banned in Legacy, which obviously is a weird combination because like there's some room for the card to exist in a fair way. So I guess maybe they did do a good job.
Yeah, and it's not breaking Modern. It's not ruining the game.
So, I mean, this is like the future, but I wouldn't assume it lasts for many more years.
If there's one card, it's like Mox Opal. If there's one card that's just waiting to be broken at some point with the printing of a new card, it's this one. Do you love playing red cards? Do you love it so much that you want everyone to only play red cards as well? Because number 2 is a tasty treat.
That makes my opponents play red cards?
Yeah, because everyone gets to play red. Why wouldn't you not all want to play the same color?
It's
and the
Painter
best
Servant. You just make everything red.
Oh, that would be a good one, but that's not a red card.
Our top 1 red card, it's Painter Servant on red. Our top 1 green card, it's Painter Servant on green.
It's none of those, it's Blood Moon. Blood Moon is a wonderful card.
It's terrible.
Only for you.
And we have both sides of the world.
On this very channel, you've seen the worst game involving Blood Moon. Toffel hit me on turn 1 with the Ragavan and played a Blood Moon on turn 2.
And it
the
was
game
great.
was over.
It took me so little time to edit that video.
Carl, you're right. Blood Moon was great.
Speaking of symmetrical effects, this one is supposed to be a symmetrical effect because the way Blood Moon reads, it's an enchantment, it costs 3 mana, and non-basic lands are mountains, which can be confusing to new players. So it just means they change. You play a non-basic land if it's a fetch land, or a shock land, or any dual land, or if a land with a cool effect.
If it doesn't say the word basic.
Basic land, it just becomes a basic mountain. which is the most fun land anyone could play,
It doesn't
arguably.
become a basic mountain, it becomes a mountain. Just mountain, not even a
Oh
basic
yeah,
mountain.
yeah. It doesn't even become a basic
It's
land.
still a non-basic, but it makes for such unfun play patterns.
You get this gotcha moment because it's easy to play around a Blood Moon. So in Modern, it's a format where you have fetch lands. They're lands that you can pay 1 life, sacrifice it, go get a land from your deck, put it into play, and you can usually get 2 or 3 color lands with these. But if you're playing against Blood Moon, you can start getting basics with them because you can start playing around it, but you don't know if they have it or if they don't have it. And there's this sweet moment if someone is throwing caution to the wind and throwing all their colors onto the board, and you just manage to resolve a Blood Moon. Haha, only I'm playing Magic now. You're punished for your frivolity. It's great, I love it. I once went to a Modern tournament with 4 main board Blood Moons. And I did pretty well too.
I like it because you said like when people know Blood Moon is in scam decks, they are in scam decks. Right? And people go, oh, I have to be prepared. They probably play Blood Moon, so we fetch for basics. I love it in some of the cases that the decks shouldn't play Blood Moon.
Yeah.
But it's like, they play Blood Moon, and then you have 5 color deck, why do you play Blood Moon? It's like, if you don't do anything and I don't do anything, eventually...
And I have a 4/4 on the board. Well,
eventually you're just gonna die. So it's like, oh, you would hurt yourself to hurt me, which is peak Blood Moon. Like,
That's what Blood Moon feels like, not the pleasant joy that you described.
everyone's in misery, so it's equal amount.
I love it when the blue-red decks sometimes play Blood Moon because they're like, oh, I have to, it's in my deck, and then realize, oh, I don't have enough blue for my cryptic command, and just die.
I think one peak Blood Moon deck that I will always remember with nostalgia is Modern's Blue Moon, which was a mono blue deck with cards like Cryptic Command, but they knew that if they resolved a Blood Moon at some point, if they had enough islands, they could lock their opponent out of the game and defend it with counter spells and then just attack in with a big master.
Yeah, that was a good deck, but once again it shows that the most powerful cards are only powerful because of context, because if you're playing at the kitchen table, that card's not doing anything.
Oh yeah, in draft, Blood Moon is probably the worst card you can play.
Yeah. So here we come to number 1, the best red card of all time. But before we get there, we do have some honorable mentions because in 30 years of Magic card design, there were some tough calls to make. We've compiled them into an article, which you can find in the pinned comment below. But let's get to the number 1 Magic card. The number 1 red card of all time actually has the number 1 on it multiple times. For example,
so it's not Shock.
It's not Shock, that would have the number 2. As its toughness, because it's a 2/1 monkey. It's Ragavan.
Of course.
Now, Ragavan, do you want to tell us a fun story with Ragavan?
So many.
Oh, yeah, no, you can't, because there are no...
I have a really fun story. So one time I attacked one turn with Lagaran and then played a Blood Moon.
Oh, that sounds like the perfect occasion. That's 2 really fun cards.
Yeah, and it wasn't even too much to edit.
We can show you right now.
Yeah. For my last trick for this match,
Yeah.
I will tap those and the treasure to cast a Blood.
This is really bad, because I have a single answer to Blood Moon in my deck. It's a Caterpillar, and also I don't have access to green mana anymore, so I think I'm just out of game 1 here.
Whoa, that
That was so fun. Wasn't that super fun?
Extremely fun.
Let's see it again.
What did Yaman do afterwards?
Nothing.
Now, Ragavan was a card when it was spoiled, revealed, shown to us for the first time. Everyone knew that card was absolutely bonkers.
But it was funny because everyone knew it was powerful, but at the time people were like, I don't know what deck I put this in. Maybe I'll put 1 in like Zoo or something, but no.
If you're in the market of pressuring your opponent and you're playing red, you better put this one in, because it puts, you know, back in the day, the pressure of this would come from 2 power on a 1 mana creature. That would be big pressure. But these days, it's generating a mana advantage so big that so early in the game, and generating card advantage at the same time.
On the beater you want. For context, when they first printed a 1 red mana 2/1, it had a downside. It was Jackal Pup, and whenever it dealt damage to itself, and it was still played. It was still super powerful.
Because 2 power for 1 mana was just this powerful. The main power of this lies in the mana advantage, which, in my opinion, which is just absurd. Like, it gets you so far ahead in the game so quickly, especially when you pair it with interactive cards, like in the Murktide region deck that you mentioned earlier. Having that extra mana so quickly makes it impossible to actually trade resources fairly for your opponent, because, well, if they spend a 2 mana counterspell on your 1 mana threat, they're still even in mana because they got that free treasure off of Ragavan. Like, playing against Ragavan can be infuriating.
In some games, you just lose on turn 1. It's a 1 card game.
That's it. Like, It can be infuriating, but playing with Ragavan and connecting with it is a high that you're going to be chasing your whole life.
Yeah.
Because dealing 2 damage, getting a treasure, and then you're not even flipping the top card of your library, you add the insult in and flipping the card of your opponent's library, and then sometimes playing it.
I can recommend playing with Ragavan and paper because the play pattern there is attack. So you're kind of tense, and then no blocks, damage. Okay, and then you get to take all the action.
Payoff.
Let me get out my pen to note down your new life total because you just took damage. Let me grab my treasure token. Let me grab that card.
It's so much in one game action.
It's also, you got hit once, you know, don't have anything. It's not like, oh, they saved the lightning bolt for the next turn because that's, when is it like? Ragavan is now or never.
There's an expression in Magic called Bolt the Bird. It's been a truism forever. If someone plays a mana dork, which is a 1 mana creature that taps for 1 mana usually, various colors, you always use a lightning bolt, which is the 4th best red card of all time.
Proven.
To destroy the creature. It's a truism. It's if you want to play good Magic, most of the time, if the opponent plays a turn 1 mana creature, you bolt it.
So what's the saying for Ragavan then? Is it, because it has to be more intense, is it like bolt the Ragavan?
The ape? Bolt the ape?
No, but just a single bolt the ape won't convince me to actually do it. I need a bolt. Really do it. Bolt.
Ban the Ragavan. Incinerate the ape.
Incinerate.
But bolt the bird also doesn't rhyme.
Yeah, but a rhyme adds more.
Oh, it's alliterations open so many more options here.